Hi guys, take a look at this engineering marvel that I am holding in my rugged, manly hands. This is a 28mm full frame lens. That is right, full frame lens. And look at the width. It is 15mm wide and it has autofocus. Where are the autofocus motors? And the autofocus actually works quite well. This is crazy. I've never seen anything this small with autofocus. This is my smallest full frame camera, the Sony ZV-E1. Let me just take off the lens cap right there and then put on this lens cap of a lens. It's like I just put on another lens cap and it's autofocus. A full frame 28mm autofocus lens that is this big. I mean, you talk about, who's that one? The Marie Kondo, the lady who says if something doesn't bring you joy, you chuck it in the trash with great disdain. Well, let me tell you something. The trash is staying far away from this combo right here because this brings me so much joy. Let's talk about it. Oh, and did I mention that it's only $99 USD, which is one of the reasons it is flying off the shelves. So, of course, I should mention that this lens was sent over for the purpose of review at no cost to myself by the fine folks over at Viltrox, and I do appreciate that because it is kind of hard to get this lens right now. It is selling out so quickly. But if they didn't have any at the Viltrox store, then I was going to buy it myself if I could because I really wanted to try it out and do a nice little review for you guys. And I was pretty sure I could find 99 bucks in my son's bank account. I don't think he'd miss it. College, that's a few years away. You know what I mean? This 28 is a unique lens for Viltrox, unique lens for anybody, really, but certainly for Viltrox. Lately, they've been concentrating on lenses like this. This is a pro lens, 27mm f1.2. They also have a 75mm f1.2. These are two of the best lenses I have reviewed for Sony APS-C. But look, these are APS-C lenses, and look at this full frame lens compared to this APS-C lens. Let me see if I can put it right there in the other camera. Look at the size difference. Full frame APS-C, 28mm, 27mm. And they have been working on a really great budget line of pretty small lenses in their own right. These are two full frame lenses that you're looking at right here. This is a 20mm f2.8, which is great for wide shots and for vlogging. This is really impressive and under $200. What's also under $200 is this 40mm f2.5. Both full frame lenses, both under $200. And they're great. So then Viltrox, they keep upping the ante. They're like, we're not done with a great budget line and some great pro lenses. We also wanted to do this little lens cap, Pancake lens. They call it Chip. Sounds like a dude who owns a yacht, but he's really cool and he lets you borrow it anytime you want. Now, a 28mm is a great focal length when it comes to general purpose photography or street photography. It gives you a pretty wide field of view, but not crazy wide. And I really like the pictures that you get out of that focal length, walking around on a nice autumn day, taking a picture of the leaves changing. I really had a lot of fun with this lens these last couple of weeks. Let's quickly talk about the build quality. It is 60 grams, 15mm wide and 60 grams. You barely feel it when you are holding it. It has that cool little lever to turn the lens cap on and off. It does not have any kind of weather sealing, but it does have a USB-C port for updates, which is crazy. I don't know how they fit the USB-C port in there. And it has a floating lens element. Now, this is something you do have to be careful of. You want to always have a lens cap with this guy because you put on the lens cap, which is about as big as the lens itself, and then you want to protect it that way because if you lay this thing down, let me see if I can show you there, the element can actually stick out. It can protrude through the bottom and you can scratch that glass element. So you don't want to do that. If you do have to lay it down when you don't have your lens cap with you, you just close the cap right there and then lay it down on its face. It has no place to put any kind of traditional screw-on filter, so my NDs, things like that, they don't fit this thing because there's no thread. The lens doesn't even have a ring for manual focus. And this is a fixed aperture lens, so you're not going to be able to stop it down or stop it up. It is f4.5. That is all you are going to get, so you're going to have to control it otherwise with your shutter speed and your ISO to get the exposure that you want. Mostly I just put it in aperture priority with auto ISO, and the camera did a fine job. Let's talk about optical quality, and honestly, I didn't expect very much. I was pleasantly surprised in many ways. There are a couple of hiccups, and we will talk about those. But first, let's get to the good stuff. Sharpness. This is a really sharp lens, a surprisingly sharp lens, especially in the center. It definitely falls off in the corners if you are using a full frame camera. If you are using an APS-C camera, it doesn't fall off nearly as much because it's going in on the lens there. So you actually get a sharper set of corners when you are using the APS-C. And this is a good lens for APS-C. Where is my A6700? Right here. See, you can just put this on the A6700, nice and small. Look at this. There it is. Look at that. Did you like my little song while I changed lenses? That is also a really good look. I like that. I'm leaving the sensor exposed. You people are probably wondering about that. I put them back on the ZV-E one. Don't worry, I'm going to clean all the sensors later. I'm a professional. So suffice it to say, I think this is plenty sharp for the price and the type of lens that it is. Now, when it comes to vignetting and barrel distortion, you are going to see some vignetting, especially when you are using it on a full frame camera. You will see it less on an APS-C camera, but that can be corrected very easily because Lightroom already has a profile for the Viltrox lens. So with one click, you can get rid of all of that vignetting as well as a little bit of the pin cushion distortion that happens with this lens. It is not very noticeable. However, the correction is there in that profile, so I would use it. Autofocus, as unbelievable as it is, a lens this size does have autofocus, and it's good autofocus. It's not as snappy and as responsive as something like a G Master lens. If you're going to be tracking fast moving subjects, this is not the lens for you, but that is not how you are shooting this lens, and it does do a good job of regular stills, autofocus, and autofocus in video as long as the subject is not moving too quickly. I think more than acceptable for this tiny little lens. I had no trouble focusing all of my photos and my video that I took with this lens, so good job, Viltrox. The lens does exhibit a fair amount of focus breathing, so if you're in video and you're trying to do some long focus pulls, you are definitely going to notice that breathing. Chromatic aberration and longitudinal chromatic aberration, they aren't much of an issue at all. You can't really find any chromatic aberration even if you bring up the shadows. And longitudinal chromatic aberration, you might see a tiny bit, but it is very, very minimal. But that makes sense. It's an f4.5. It's not a super fast lens. So the Loca and the CA, no real problem. The bokeh is fine on this lens. It is nothing to write home about. At f4.5, you're not going to get a ton of background separation anyway in most of your photos. However, if the subject is close enough to you, you certainly can blur out that background, and that blur does look okay. Something else that's unique about this lens is they built the design of the lens to give you prominent sun stars. So that can be good and bad depending on who you are, but it is kind of cool that you get those very prominent sun stars when you have a nice bright light. However, the bright light is a double-edged sword, and here is what I think is the biggest negative to this lens besides the fixed aperture, and that is the flaring, the ghosting of bright lights. Now, when you have a backlit subject, sometimes you can really ruin your photo. And since there's no lens hood, there's no way to put on any kind of filter, if you get the sun coming in at the wrong angle, it will just wash out your entire photo, and that will not be usable. So you definitely have to learn to use this lens when you're out and about and the sun is streaming in there. But when your shots don't have that awful glare flare, they are quite nice and the colors pop very well. You just have to be aware of that backlit situation and those washed out colors. So you have this tiny pocketable lens that actually has some pretty good optics and certainly won't break the bank at $99 US. I just think it makes photography so fun when you can go grab a unique lens, go out there, really experience photography instead of walking around with your phone. Listen, nothing wrong with phones. I do like taking photos and I do it all the time, but going out with this type of lens, it feels like you're really doing photography. You're making your photographs, and then when you get them into Lightroom, I feel like you can do so much more with them coming with this full frame sensor. Even this one right here, the ZV-E1 12 megapixels, it's plenty. And I have this tiny little setup and I love it so much. Once again, big thanks to Viltrox for sending this along for review. And let me know down below, does this lens float your boat? And if so, are you gonna pick it up? We'll have a nice little discussion about it. Hey, thanks for watching this. We'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.